Hello, folks, and welcome to another edition of the reality show, the June 26th, 2024 edition. I'm the host for today, Kirk Wilcox, here with two beautiful, intelligent, charismatic guests. Let's start by introducing them. We got Fox Business's Jonathan Honig. How's it going today, Jonathan?
Great to be with you, Kirk. Thank you.
And our other guests, I assume are we still live from Israel? Jonathan, how's it going?
Very good. Thank you, Kirk. Doing well.
And today we're going to talk about this possibility of the group Hamas, who, as we know, has been at war with Israel since at least October 7th, when they launched terrorist attacks on October 7th. I'm sure we're all aware of that. But there are discussions that Hamas may be relocating its headquarters out of Qatar and to Iraq. And okay, that was, but the article I have on was playing ads and I was getting music and I was a little thrown for a loop there. Sorry about that. Anyway, according to Ynet News, this is happening. Hamas plans to move political office from Qatar to Iraq. Apparently, the Iraqi government has already approved this, and I guess Iran has promised to protect Hamas in such a scenario. But then we're getting reports from the Jerusalem Post. I think this was from June 24th, that reports that Hamas refutes claim that leadership plans to relocate from Qatar. I think there's a lot to say about this, but Jonathan, why don't we go with you first? What do you make of all this?
Yes, thank you. I think we finally got the reason why America invaded Iraq to make room for the Hamas headquarters, perhaps to make sure they have an escape. And unfortunately, this is what we're seeing. The whole thing is ridiculous. The whole thing is completely ridiculous. The very fact that they even have an office in Iraq, and now after how many years that this office has been active, they now we are reminded that they probably should not have it in Qatar. Although it does seem rather fitting to a place like Qatar. It doesn't seem like very out of place. It's not like the office was in I don't know. Well, actually, I don't know of a country where it would be fitting, but still. Yeah, and moving to Iraq also could be a benefit for Israel. It would be easier for Israel to attack Iraq. It's closer to Israel. So hopefully this will happen. I think it will be a positive move, but not that much because it doesn't really matter. What matters is what happens on the battlefield. And unfortunately, we are not seeing enough of what needs to be seen. So I wouldn't make too much of these news. Could go either way, but it doesn't really matter where the office is. What matters is that for some reason these guys are still alive, and that should be the cause of outrage.
Yeah, you mentioned that maybe this is good because now we got Iran and Hamas. They're close together. I was thinking the same thing. Like, now we can probably do two birds with one stone. With Iran and Hamas holding hands together in Iraq. But as you mentioned, Jonathan, this is also a glaring sign of a failed American foreign policy since at least 9/11, which I can elaborate on further. It's also worth noting that this was speculated going back to at least April. On the Wall Street Journal, they had an article talking about how Hamas explores moving political headquarters out of Qatar. I get the speculation is that Qatar has been putting, not because Qatar is good, but I guess they have been more in the making deals mindset of this whole conflict. And I guess they've been pressuring Hamas to maybe make deals, hostage deals, ceasefire deals. Hamas is apparently not down for that. And I guess the United States has also been pressuring Qatar to pressure Hamas. I think I saw a couple of headlines that reported back in May that the United States was pressuring Qatar to expel Hamas if they did not come and make a ceasefire deal, a hostage deal, which, now it's late June, almost July, and we still don't have any progress on those fronts. But Jonathan Honig, we have not heard from you yet. What do you make of all
I mean,
this?
Kirk, thank you. I mean, it sounds to me just from reading this and, not as an expert of the Middle East, that I guess quite simply, Israel hasn't, it sounds somewhat heartless, but hasn't killed enough Palestinians because Hamas is not listening. Hamas wants no part of a deal. They've been basically ignoring mediators for months now, and happy to move offices, as he said. I mean, the U.S. apparently has been putting pressure on Qatar. U.S. and Qatar have a close relationship. The U.S. has an air base there. I don't know why, and then hoping that Qatar can pressure, as you said, Hamas to make a deal with Israel. Hamas wants no part of that. They're getting ready to, as you said, up and move their entire headquarters, or at least some of their offices, to Iraq, which won't pressure them into negotiations, won't pressure them into a ceasefire. So, I think we still have this kind of Western mentality that, oh, they don't really want war. They want us. They don't really want that. Seems like they do. You've got the majority of the Palestinian population still supporting Hamas, and Hamas not only disinterested in a ceasefire, but going out of the way to leave the country, which housing them in effect because they're pressuring them for a ceasefire. So Israel hasn't finished the job militarily. That's what needs to be done.
Yeah, and when looking into this, I was thinking, why is Hamas in Qatar for the first place? Especially when we know that Hamas won elections back in 2006 in Gaza, and Gaza, nice strip of beachfront property. Here I live in California. If I was given my own country off the coast of the Pacific Ocean, like maybe Malibu or Redondo Beach or Santa Monica or whatever, given if the residents voted me in, I got my own country, I could call it Kirkomania or Kyrgyzstan, I'd probably relocate there and set up my headquarters there and turn it into a free market paradise, and it'd be amazing. I'd be all for it. But I'm like, why is Hamas, when they were given their own little country, their beautiful strip of beachfront property known as the Gaza Strip, why are they operating in Qatar in the first place? I guess the United States, according to Wikipedia, requested in 2011 that Qatar provide a base for Hamas to ease communications with the group. Also, according to Wikipedia, from 2018 to 2023, Israel's government enabled and approved the Qatari support for Hamas. But I guess that's about to come to an end, depending on which source you want to read. And just going back to the fact that this is just a fail, we got to go back to 2006 when Hamas won the elections. This was part of George W. Bush's let's spread democracy to the Middle East agenda. Let's let the Palestinians have their own democratic elections. They voted in Hamas. Oopsie daisy, but no worries. We also got Iraq. We turned that into a wonderful democracy, and they voted in Islamic theocrats to draft their constitution. And ever since, we've seen Iran-backed militias operate in Iraq. We've seen the rise of ISIS, and now we're seeing Hamas relocate to Iraq with, again, the protection of Iran. Again, just another glaring sign of foreign policy failure from the United States. Jonathan,
is it safe to say that Hamas, while in Qatar, should have been a target? Countries can't house criminals, murderous criminals. They should be, I would think, militarily, they should be a target there. But, maybe the fact that they felt safe in Qatar, ostensibly close with the U.S., again, indicates that the U.S. hasn't been strong enough, and Israel hasn't been militarily strong enough, on this issue. I mean, I think the point is you want to get people frightened to be associated with Hamas. You want to have people say, we want nothing to do with Hamas. We want Hamas out of our country. We don't want to belong to Hamas. House hostages from Hamas. We want nothing to do with them, and that isn't yet the case. And I don't know the only way to make that case other than militarily.
But Jonathan, Qatar is one of our allies. I believe we have a nice Air Force base there. And again, we requested, even according to the Wall Street Journal article from April that I mentioned, that it's Hamas has lived in Doha since 2012 in an arrangement supported by the United States. Hey, we supported this, and wouldn't it be nice, Hamas, they're Islamic theocratic terrorist group that's at war with the United States and Israel, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to communicate with them so that we can arrange for negotiations and whatnot? Isn't diplomacy a good thing?
Well, it legitimizes, Rand always talks about, sanction of the victim. And we treat these backward, totally primitive, theocratic tribes like they're real countries, like they're modern Western thinking people. They're not. Look at what's in their charter, what they do, how they act. these are, again, paraphrasing Rand, in my opinion, savages. Look at October 7th. That is absolute savagery. So, I mean, my thought is Qatar or any country would expel these individuals. We want nothing to do with them. And I think that's what a proper military approach would take. They'd say, hey, can we open a base, open an office? They'd say, no, absolutely not. You're not welcome here. That's the type of ideological change I think that only, a couple of good, I don't know, missiles and attacks can accomplish.
There's an historical example for this. After World War II, the Nazis went into hiding, right? They went into South America, countries like Argentina. And notice the difference. When you actually defeat an enemy, they go into hiding. They don't go and establish, here's the office of the Nazi party in Buenos Aires. There was no such thing. They were hiding there, afraid of Nazi hunters coming to take them. And on many occasions, it actually happened, most famously with Adolf Eichmann. So that is what happens when you have a proper approach to war. The fact that there is such a thing as an office, overseas office in exile, whatever you want to call it, shows a complete lack of understanding of what the nature of this conflict is by the Israelis, first and foremost. It's the Israel's wars, it's not the Americans' war. The whole thing is just ridiculous. What should have been done by Israel is to say to Qatar, you either hand us in all the Hamas people or we blow up your gas fields. That's what we should have told them. But we didn't. We don't do anything of this kind. We actually, the Israeli president goes and shakes hands with the dictator of Qatar, and we thank them and how much of great mediators they are. There's nothing to mediate about. There's nothing to talk about. They're actually assisting. When you hide the criminal, right? When there's a murderer and you hide him in your house, you are also a criminal. So Qatar are exactly like their accomplices to the Hamas people, and they should be punished for it. America actually gives them like prizes for hiding these murderers. It shows the complete moral bankruptcy of the West, and
the fact that Jonathan, to your point, the fact that Iraq is seemingly happy to take them, it's already been voted on, as I understand, indicates that they're not worried at all about an attack on that office. Is there extra damage or whatnot, or loss of life? They welcome.
But Jonathan, you said we should maybe go after Qatar. We should have blown up their gas fields, I think is what you said. Wouldn't that create a regional conflict and make this war even greater and worse than it already is?
Good. It's time for that. It needed to happen years ago, decades ago. As Peikoff said, it needs to be from 79 on Iran. But we are here because we are refusing to acknowledge the fact that we need to escalate. We need a regional war because you have many people in the region who want to kill you. So you have to go after a regional war. That's just also World War II was a regional war because the nature of the enemy was it was a regional enemy. They invaded all of Europe. So you have to fight a regional war. There's nothing inherently bad about the fact that it's a regional or a bigger war. That's the way it is. That's the result of our evasion, and we have to face the consequences. And it's better now than later because then they'll have nuclear weapons, and then it'll be really, really, really much more problematic. So we might as well.
Yeah, and I think I was going to say, if a country like Iran gets nuclear weapons, we'll be even more afraid. We're afraid now with them not having nuclear weapons of this like escalating to a regional war. Imagine the minute they get nuclear weapons, we're not going to do anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of emphasizes, so this is my opinion, so much of the Middle East, all of it, ex-Israel, just such a cesspool that without the natural resources that just, I guess, luckily happen to be there that they can exploit, a lot of the technology, of course, expropriated from the West, what would they have? They don't seemingly develop, create, innovate produce anything. We talk about these states as their legitimate states. Like, if a country like, victimizes and their own citizens, if they deny their own citizens the most basic individual rights, like what kind of a state even is that? I don't consider it to be, a legitimate state at all. But they're emboldened by our weakness. And, Rand said it in that 79 Donahue interview that if we didn't go in to get the American hostages in the first, what did she say, 2 or 3 days, we were lost. I'm paraphrasing, but it seems like this is once again, Yonatan. I mean, if Israel had attacked, gone after the leaders in Qatar, Iraq wouldn't accept them. No one would. They would see it as an actual risk, but they were soft, and thus the evil is able to grow.
Yeah, there are so many examples in our recent history of the U.S. For example, Reagan with Arafat providing him safe passage to Tunisia. There are so many examples of the U.S. making it worse. Not only not having a regional war, but actually make the war that will come in the nearby future, maybe in the coming weeks, as tensions are higher than ever here in Israel. It's all way worse, because it's not just it's just a bit we delayed it, but every delay makes it much worse, because they build more weapons, they are stronger morally, they are stronger on the public opinion front, in all fronts they are stronger, and that's all thanks to Israel's weakness and the US.
Yeah, to Jonathan's point earlier about the technology, my understanding pre-October 7th, a reason why countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other countries in the Middle East were starting to warm up on Israel was because Israel had developed nice desalination technology, which, for those who don't know, the Middle East, it's a desert. It gets pretty hot there in times of the year, and so they do need some clean drinking water. And apparently a lot of countries were willing to put their differences with Israel aside to get their hands on that sweet desalination technology. And yeah, if you read about the history of oil discovery, especially a place like Iran in the early 1900s, it was greedy financiers and oil businesses from the United Kingdom who went there to explore oil. They almost left. They were there for a couple of years. They spent a lot of money finding no good, reliable oil resources. They're about to pack it up and leave. And then they got it at the last minute. And then they built the infrastructure necessary to both extract and refine and transport the oil, because none of that existed in there. And I think even according to Stephen Kinzer's book, All the Shah's Men, I think he even claims that without the influence of the British, Iran probably never finds that oil on their own. And then it's just taken for granted. And then, decades later, the political leaders in Iran think that they have some sort of right to nationalize the oil or whatever, based on some blood and soil nonsense, as far as I can tell.
That's a really, really important point, Kirk. And if somebody in the chat can refer me to a good source on the history of oil in the Middle East, because it's a subject that's very hard to actually find credible sources on. But from my understanding, most of it is stolen. These Arab countries, they didn't even discover their own oil. So think about their moral worth as a nation, that everything they live off is stolen by Westerners who discovered it and took all the hard work, and then they attacked the West.
A book I would recommend on that topic is Daniel Yergin's The Prize.
Yonatan, can we quickly go back to something you mentioned before, that the fact that America supposedly liberated Iraq. Now, what, 30 years later, you've got a theocracy that's harboring terrorists, and it was, we've got to bring them the vote, self-determination. And it kind of goes back.
Hey now. At least the theocracy was democratically elected, okay?
Right. I mean, is that multiculturalism that we think, well, hey, if they voted it in, that's what it is? Like, is that, if I'm trying to diagnose what is the issue there, that, well, as long as you have a vote for politics, as long as you have a vote, but they voted in the same type of terrible theocracy, rights denying, that now is literally harboring American terrorists because the ideas haven't changed. The politicians, the way the political, but the ideas, anti-Israel, anti-West, anti-capitalist, anti-production, anti-American, and those ideas are the same. So they're not only aiding terrorists, they're harboring, and as you said, Jonathan, should be targets themselves.
Absolutely, and I think also a very, very important source on that is the ominous parallels. It's a very similar phenomena. I'm not an expert. It could be that it's virtually identical. The way that these culture, as Peikoff brilliantly surveys the history of Weimar, of the Germany before the Nazis, and he shows how the culture is all about Nazism. They just needed a Führer. That's all they needed. And we have the same thing, as they identify, the same trends happening in the Western world. And I'm sure something very similar in Iraq and in the Middle East.
Want to shout out Ryan Ward in the chat, who sends a super chat, $6.99 Canadian, with a it's a super sticker that asks, "How's it going?" I'm doing fine personally. I wish our foreign policy was doing a lot better. Although there is good news, not to go off on a tangent, but it looks like Congressman Jamal Bowman last night lost his primary in New York. And for those who don't know, he's one of these members of the Squad who's not a big fan of Israel. So I think that's good news. It looks like the infamous Squad wing of the Democratic Party will have at least one fewer members next year. So that's good news. So I guess that's something to celebrate today. What do you guys think of that?
Absolutely worth celebrating. Maybe some good ideas happening. I'll also throw out celebrating that Apollo Zeus gifted an Ayn Rand Center UK membership to tragedy and comedy. And we've got so many members so active on the chat, people like Jesse and Bonnie and so many else here that I almost can't keep up. Thank you all for supporting us. It's like £5 a month, keeps us on the air. 2 brand new shows today, every day, integrating Ayn Rand's objectivism into modern events with experts like Kirk, Jonathan, and so many others. So thank you for supporting what we do.
Yeah, and I'll add about Jamal Bowman. My knowledge of him is that he was a member of this clown show organization called Democratic Socialists of America. And I guess they at one point considered expelling him because they thought he was too pro-Israel at one point. Can you believe that? But Democratic Socialists of America, democratic socialism, a lot of people think of it as like, oh, well, they don't want like Lenin-style communism or socialism. They just want like a mixed economy like Denmark or France with its free health care and increased spending on tuition-free college or whatever. Yet if you look into the antics of what that organization is up to, I know at one point, I think one of their chapters in San Francisco is holding Mao Zedong book club meetings. They used to sell Karl Marx merch on their website, and I know they've had multiple chairs talk about how they think communism is a good idea and they want to abolish stuff like capitalism and profits and billionaires. So yeah, I think it's a little more ominous than, hey, we just want whatever Denmark has. But that's the kind of representative congressman that Jamal Bowman was. So even aside from his horrible views on Israel, he was pretty horrible.
So they sold Karl Marx merch to advance socialism. Interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, bring that a little bit back. It's the keffiyeh is a popular fashion statement in the U.S. now among young people now. There was a couple that was arrested at an anti-Israel rally. I saw, kind of made the news a couple of days ago. They pulled a baby out of the car, and the baby was wearing a little mini keffiyeh, a little baby keffiyeh. And the fact that you talked about, Jonathan, the kind of the moral war, the popularity war. The fact that whether it be Qatar, whether it be Hamas, whether it be Qatar, whether it be Iraq, Hamas has so many sympathizers out there, and U.S. campuses in the Middle East. People think that Hamas is fighting a moral cause, that they're in the right, that they're victors. More than anyone, the Palestinians themselves believe that this is a moral, just fight that must continue. And the fact that I think we legitimize the Palestinians, we legitimize Hamas at every opportunity, and all these other countries that are so backward. I mean, how can we like legitimize a country that throws? I was seeing like what does it take to throw another human being off of a building? Like I don't know, a gay man or a gay woman. Like, what kind of a human being could do that to another human being? That's everyday stuff in the Middle East, and I think we sanction them at our own peril.
Everyday stuff outside of Israel, which a lot of knuckleheads here in the West don't want to exist.
Yes, but Israel does, according to Brianna Joy Gray, train its military dogs to rape prisoners. I read that, and so it must be true. This is according to an anti-Israel commentator, formerly of The Hill, and many others on X.
Interesting. I've seen recently a photo also of a Nazi march in Times Square. Have you seen this photo from 1932? So there's a lot of historical precedent also with the communists of sympathy in the West, in America, for the worst ideologies out there. So the fact that there are so many people now embracing the kafir, I don't find it surprising. I find it yeah, it's despicable, but it's a trend, and it happens because that's the morality. They see that's actually, they are consistent. The Hamas people are consistent with what they are taught in universities. So it makes perfect sense. What we have to attack is the root cause of these issues and these ideas. That's what we have to challenge.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like Francisco Dean Conya's money speech from Atlas Shrugged, where he said something along the lines of money can buy you a car, but it cannot replace you as the driver. And as far as I can tell, when it comes to countries like the United States and Israel, we have these well-funded, big, powerful militaries. But from what I can tell, our political leaders and the voters who vote these knuckleheads in don't have the moral confidence to properly use such powerful militaries to defeat their enemies.
Yeah,
I do want to go. Oh, go on, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, I mean, like Tan, you started off our program, kind of aghast that Hamas has these offices, that it's it has this air of legitimacy for being a total theocratic organization, really an oppressive organization, a terrorist organization, that it's able to have negotiations and offices. And that hasn't changed. Now, how many 200 and some 70 days into this war, 60 days into this war, and that to me is a pox on Israel's house for not doing the military job. I don't see any other way this could be done militarily, given the ideas that motivate Hamas. Israel, I don't believe, is motivated by bloodlust. Israel is not going out there snatching territory, bombing indiscriminately. They didn't ask for this. They didn't start this, but they need to finish it. And as long as Hamas feels as they can just, set up an office here and set up an office there, then the work isn't done.
Absolutely. And the office itself, it doesn't matter. What matters is what's going on in the South, what's going on in the North. That's what matters. What matters is, are there still tunnels operating, sending, oil into Gaza? Are we still giving them trucks filled with resources? Are we still handing them this so-called humanitarian aid? Are our soldiers advancing quickly enough? Are we sacrificing our soldiers to save this hostile population? Those are the crucial points that we have to combat. Wherever they have their silly office. Now, imagine they have an office and they sit there. What do they do in that office? They literally plan how they are going to annihilate a country. Like can you imagine an office of even an ordinary criminal organization? There's no such thing. Why is it legitimate that they will have it? It really is baffling. Yeah.
I want to quickly just jump in. One of our super chatters, I'm not going to mention his name because he's not a member, but maybe he could become one, reminded us that they have American hostages. And the fact that America has a relationship with Qatar, housing Hamas while Hamas is holding American hostages, God help any one of us if we ever get taken, because you sure as hell know the Americans are going to come and get you. I mean, we talked about Israel at least busting down some doors and going in and doing this. They've got American hostages, and still it's very.
Israel will do more for the American hostages than America itself.
I believe it.
And maybe we'll, pressure Qatar to pressure Hamas, and maybe Hamas will eventually come to the negotiating table and turn over those American hostages. I mean, what more can you expect from the institution that is tasked with protecting your individual rights? I do want to bring this back to, let's talk about this move's potential impact on Israel. The Wall Street Journal article from April that I mentioned earlier mentions that if Hamas were to relocate out of Qatar, it would make it more difficult for the U.S. and Israel to negotiate with them and make ceasefire deals. Same thing with the Ynet news article. They conclude the piece by saying that if Hamas's political leadership moves to Iraq, it would make reaching a deal in Gaza less likely. So what impact does this have on the current conflict in Israel if Hamas were to successfully move to Iraq?
I think they will still continue the same, the fake negotiation. To Netanyahu's credit, I think he's dragging this for a political tactical reason. He's actually doing this negotiation. I don't think it's very serious from our end. It is outrageous to see like Israel's demand that we actually play along with it, but there's a lot of pressure inside Israel to participate, unfortunately, in that. So I can see why the leadership would make these tactical decisions to kind of keep a facade for the population. Yes, we're doing it, but Hamas rejects the negotiation. So whatever that means, make it more difficult. I think the best solution for that, let them open a branch in Pennsylvania Avenue in DC. Let's just do that and have them like next door in front of the White House, and that'll make things the easiest for the US to communicate with them. If they want to communicate with them, take them with you. Take them to America. Israel should not object to that. And they have so many supporters as well in the US. I think that should be the natural destination. Unfortunately, they might actually have more of an opposition in Iraq. The Kurds definitely don't like these people. There's a lot of problems inside Iraq that will make it difficult for them to actually be there. Probably more difficult than in Qatar, and probably more difficult than in the US. I say it jokingly, but there is some truth in it.
Yeah, I mean, war is ugly. It's terrible. It's why you shouldn't start one. It's horrible. And the fact that, as I read it, Hamas is still demanding permanent ceasefire, full withdrawal of Israeli forces, reconstruction of Gaza, unconditional return of Palestinians displaced by the conflict. They're still making all these demands, telling me that the war isn't over. At the end of a war, one side has to submit for the war to be over. One side has to say, we were wrong, we're changing our ways, we're changing our ideas, and then a peace can begin. So, the fact, I think Yonatan, paraphrasing in effect, the fact that, they're changing their locale says that they're not interested in submission now. They're not interested in giving up. They like the weight that the hostages give them. They think it gives them clout, and they're using it. And, the job isn't done yet, and it can only be finished militarily. And if Israel discovers where Hamas is hiding in Iraq, I hope they attack them there as well.
And just think about what this says about these futile attempts to negotiate with evil. Hamas is evil, and it's to the point where they are seemingly willing to downgrade their standards of living in Qatar, which a lot of people assume they live in like nice, comfy luxurious buildings in places like Qatar, and they're willing to move to Iraq because they are that unwilling to negotiate with Israel or the United States on hostage releases and ceasefire deals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
yeah. They don't. I mean, we see all the memes about all the Palestinians killed, but they're not interested in giving up. They're not interested in stopping the war, returning the hostages. There's no indication of that at all. So what is Israel supposed to do? How can you expect them to act when attacked? And the fact that other countries are willing to harbor them, deal with them, negotiate with them, be with them, is an indication that the war is not over. And that
Not to mention support them financially, in the name of humanitarian aid or whatever.
Yeah, and
Anyway, go on.
just I want to say, consider like history. Leadership usually doesn't go and leave when it's in a war. It doesn't go and leave in a different country, right? Even Stalin in the Battle of Moscow, he insisted we're staying in Moscow until the bitter end. Hitler stayed in Berlin until the end. Notice the cynicism and the maybe you guys have a better term for it, but they go outside of their homeland to do politics whilst their citizens are like suffering. Even Hitler didn't do that. They're that cynical, and that I think is very revealing. Not that they need any more revealing, but and the fact that the West just plays along with it. It's all a ridiculous charade, and I would call out my country for allowing this whole thing to happen, and hopefully this will change. But I don't see any trends, unfortunately, towards that. I only see things becoming worse because of our lack of moral backbone. So I can only hope that through the work we're doing here, we can change the minds of as many people as possible, because that's the only thing that matters. What philosophy people are holding, what ideas do they hold? If the world would have seen it to be as ridiculous as it is, that Hamas's offices, overseas offices, it wouldn't have happened. It will be the people themselves would go with batons and burn down their offices. That if we were in a just world, but we're living in such a cynical a world that these things can happen, and the only way to change it is through the right ideas.
All right. So I think we're going to begin wrapping up the show. But before I do want to mention that it is my birthday this week. And you guys know what I would like for my birthday this year. I would like some, maybe some more super chats or some subscriptions here to the Ayn Rand Center UK, some support for this channel. So if you guys want to wish me happy birthday, feel free to do so with the dollars in your wallet and your bank accounts. But before we wrap things up, you can find me on Twitter on Elon Musk's website, Kirk Wilcox. I also have a YouTube channel with years full of content. Kirk Wilcox on YouTube. But Jonathan and Jonathan, where can the good folks of Ayn Rand Center UK find you guys?
I'm at capitalistpig.com, where I manage money professionally. And my latest book is Can You Really Love a Dog? Leonard Peikoff and Ayn Rand on Pets, at Amazon.
Happy birthday, Kirk. I am
Thank you.
Substack, philosophyIneedit.com, link in the description.
And Lori Seto with $2 super chat says, happy birthday, Kirk. Thank you. And thank you for supporting the channel. And we're going to wrap things up. Don't forget to tune into tomorrow to the June 27th editions of The Reality Show and The Daily Objective. Jonathan Oning with $5 says, happy birthday, Kirk. Thank you, Jonathan. And thank you for supporting the channel. And if you happen to get those super chats in after the show goes off, I apologize ahead of time. Thank you for those birthday wishes. But for the Ayn Rand Center UK, Jonathan and Jonathan, I'm Kirk Wilcox, and hopefully we will see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.